finding a way to make sure that you can commit to something for longevity. The same is true for how you're choosing to eat. So if you embark on a fad diet journey, the chances of it being short term are pretty high.
Especially if you're miserable.
Yes, exactly. And if you're
Because
taking away
is that really
things
how you
that
want to
love.
live?
Yes.
Yeah. On a daily basis. I mean, personally, I get a lot of joy from good food, and I like cooking, and I like eating with my family.
Yes.
And so that has to be a part of my lifestyle.
Yes.
You
And
know?
if you love ice cream or you love cookies, if you're taking those away completely, the chances of binging on them later are much higher.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of At Home with Emily, a podcast about creating a life you love. We are continuing our 4-part series this month, all about your health and well-being and what goals that you may have. And we're hoping that we can help you with those goals or even help set them. And with me today is Nikki Love, personal trainer and yoga studio owner. Nikki, thanks for coming back.
Yes. Thank you for having me.
We have lots of questions, so you get to be on the hot seat today.
Okay.
And so I've got most of those copied down. And one that we got in a couple different ways and forms is about weight loss, which I know you said is one of the big things that you hear about in January. And the question was, is calorie deficiency truly the best way for weight loss? And if so, how do you find your way back out of that without getting the weight back on? I mean, we've all either experienced that or seen that where someone loses a lot of weight and then it seems like they gain more weight back after the diet.
Yes, it is a way for weight loss. I don't know that it's necessarily the best way for it, but it definitely, it works. It's effective. I would recommend working with a dietitian on that because the dietitian can not only help you with the deficit, but they can help you with coming back out of it effectively and making sure that you're not going to pile all of that weight back on. Dietitians know how to do that, and they can do it effectively and make sure that they're not kind of like making you feel a certain way about it.
Well, what I've seen too, just from talking with people who've been successful, is sometimes it's not about cutting calories. It's more about changing what you're eating too. I mean, just the nature of what we are putting in our bodies, the changes that we can make there. And sometimes the dietitian will tell you, you need more calories.
Yes, that absolutely can happen. I am a huge fan of just doing the best that you can do with whole natural foods. And that, again, a dietitian can help you kind of work through that. I know at Achieving Your Best, we have different tests that you can do where it will tell you, the test will come out and tell you how much you burn at rest, how much, what you typically run on. Is it more carbohydrates? Is it more protein? Is it more fat? And it can give you a really good broad view of what your body needs. And then you can work directly with a dietitian that would help you then, be able to tell you, you need X amount of calories just to maintain. You need X amount of calories because you need to rebuild your system a little bit, or you need to, if you want to, reduce your intake a little bit to lose, then we can do this. And
Here's the
they'll do
plan.
Measurements. Yeah.
And so you're not just doing it by yourself.
Yes.
Which can be very intimidating at the grocery store.
Very much so.
I think having that partner and advocate with you is huge.
Yes.
So you know what to do. Okay, very good. Next one. Okay, so we did get a lot of questions about fad diets, but one question we got is, are they effective?
Again, I think they can be effective. I kind of like what I was saying the other day about, or in our last session, about finding a way to make sure that you can commit to something for longevity. The same is true for how you're choosing to eat. So if you embark on a fad diet journey, the chances of it being short term are pretty high.
Especially if you're miserable.
Yes, exactly. And if you're
Because
taking away
is that really
things
how you
that
want to
love.
live?
Yes.
Yeah. On a daily basis. I mean, personally, I get a lot of joy from good food, and I like cooking, and I like eating with my family.
Yes.
And so that has to be a part of my lifestyle.
Yes, and if you love ice cream or you love cookies, if you're taking those away completely, the chances of binging on them later are much higher.
Because you're very focused on missing ice cream. Okay, so another question that came in, what about after 50? Best diet and exercise where you can still lose weight but not lose muscle. And I know that's hard especially when we get older.
Yeah.
It's so much harder to build muscle.
Definitely. Again, I would make sure you're working with a dietitian on that one because dietitians are going to know exactly how much protein you need for your body and as an individual.
And that cannot be just a broad answer.
Yes, exactly. And for your age and for your height and for, exactly, and whatever your goals are as far as like how much fitness you're doing too. I do think that people should be lifting weights as well to maintain their muscle mass and their bone density. So that would be a good thing for women over 50. If they're not already doing that, they should probably start to embark on that.
Nikki, you know what women are going to say. Women are going to say, well, I don't want to be big and bulky, and I don't want to be all muscular, and I don't want to add on the weight from muscle. And so what we see a lot of women doing, just you and I in our phase of life, is we just see them walking, which is good. That's a weight-bearing exercise. But you don't see a lot of women in the weight room.
Yes. I think that kind of depends on where you're going as well, and also what your goals are. Women can put on a lot of bulk if they want to. If that's their goal and they want to do that, there are people who can help women do that. There are also people who can help women lift weights and keep muscle mass that they already have and lean out and feel strong and light simultaneously. There are people who can help women do both.
Such as yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think there is that. But as you said, as we age, we do lose bone density. That's something that I've heard you hit on before. And muscle kind of counters that, right?
Yes. So anything that we're doing that's weight bearing is going to be good for our bones.
Okay.
And then also we lose muscle mass as we age too. It just starts to deteriorate.
Right.
So continuing to build muscle is only going to help keep us feeling more youthful.
Yeah. And so how much strength training are we talking about?
Ideally, I would say 2, but honestly 3 to 4 times a week would be great. Yes.
And so are you talking about would a yoga class count for that? Where you're doing a plank or doing something like that, or should it involve some actual weights?
I think personally, and everyone has their own opinion. Personally, I think that it should involve weights. So more like a yoga sculpt class would be great, or a circuit class at a gym.
So it doesn't have to be heavy weights necessarily.
Yeah. It can be. And I do lift heavy weights as well.
Which we wouldn't guess by looking at you, because you're very petite.
Yeah. I love to lift heavy weights. I think it feels really good.
And strong.
Yeah.
Okay. Another question that we had come in was also on workouts such as, let's say, a Pilates or a yoga that are a little friendlier to your joints and to your body. Is that an okay place to start, or do you think that they do need to add in other workouts?
I think it's a great place to start. I think as long as we touched on this in the other interview, as long as you're finding a community that feels safe and good to you, then I think as long as you're continuing to move your body, you're doing a great job. And then over time, if you want to add a little bit more, that's great. The most important thing is that when you step into a facility, you feel safe. You feel like the way that you're doing the movements feels appropriate to your body.
Since you mentioned that, what about injury? I feel like you can have the best of intentions, but if you get sidelined, it's harder to start again and come back. Is there anything that you work on with clients to prevent injuries?
Yes, yoga is a great way to do that. Also, just making sure that you are stretching after you work out and warming up properly before you work out instead of just jumping into it. That was something that I think it was harder for me to learn as I aged, because when I was young, I could just jump right into anything. It didn't really matter. I could just start going. And then I realized I needed a much longer warm up, and I still need to remember always to stretch when I finish, because those are both great things for injury prevention.
So what about the person who's listening to this or watching this and thinking, yeah, that's great, but that just seems like a lot? Because I think it can feel overwhelming to start something new. Would you start with walking, or like how? What would you say for getting started if we're coming from not doing anything?
I would say start with something that feels good to you intuitively. So if you're just a little bit nervous about stepping into a public space, walking would be great. And there's a lot of things that you can find online too, where you could do like a walk jog, or maybe it's just a video online that you find as well that you can do in the comfort of your own home. You could buy really light hand weights to start as well for something at home. Also, if you like to work out and keep something a little bit more faster paced, start with a gym that does a circuit training class and commit to 1 or 2 classes a week there. Do the introductory offer there and see how it feels. If you just like to stretch and it feels really good and you want to sweat, start with a hot yoga class and go from there. But start with one thing. Just start with one thing and go from there. Because I'm giving so many different options because I want people to know there are options.
Pick one and build.
But pick one and build, yeah.
And I think too, Nikki, trying to meet someone new and find a friend.
Yes.
Or if you have a friend that has been sort of talking about things the same way as you and is wanting to get back into things, I'm big on taking a friend with me.
Yes.
When I try something new. And I know it seems like I'm pretty fit, but when I try something new, even like for me, having been around gyms for a lot of years, it can feel intimidating. And I definitely use the phone a friend line.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, will you please come to this with me? Because when you show up, a lot of the people, they've been doing it a long time. And comparison can be a thief of joy of trying something new too, can't it?
Yes, absolutely. I love that idea because 1, it gives you comfort to have someone with you, and 2, it gives you accountability.
Well, I will never forget one of the first times that I tried hot yoga, which is actually challenging. It can be harder or easier depending on the class, the instructor, where you go. But this particular class that I did was so hard. It was not your class. This was at a different facility. I ran out of water. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it through this class. And then the instructor came around and gave everyone a cold towel. And I was just thinking, if I could just make it to this towel, And I'm reaching back, and there's no towel. Like I'm laying there, and I didn't get a towel.
Oh no!
And so all of a sudden, this hand reaches forward and hands me a towel. It's my friend that I took with me to the class. Oh. She gave me her towel. That's real friendship.
Yes, that is true friendship.
And I was thinking, granted, I was her ride. So if I hadn't have gotten that towel, could I have even made it to drive home?
Yes.
But shout out to Carol Sue. Thank you, Carol Sue. You are a true friend. But just having a friend, that's the ultimate example. I was just in way over my head in that class. It was too hard for me.
Yeah.
And having a friend there to help me up off the mat.
Yeah. But thinking back on that too, do you feel like even though it felt too hard in the moment, nobody was probably judging you or
no, and
watching?
That's what I tell people when they're trying something new. It's really kind of a self-focused place. Any type of workout facility or gym, if you really look around at where everyone's eyes are, it's on themselves.
Yes.
And no one is really looking at you. And it is disconcerting, all the mirrors, if you're new to a place like that. But when you really start to notice, you're on your own.
Yeah.
No one's judging you and no one's noticing you. But that's also an example. I share that story because it was too hard for me. And I needed to find somewhere else. because this particular class was too much for me. I could probably go back and do it now, but at the time, I couldn't.
It wasn't your place. Yeah.
It wasn't the point of yoga.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you should leave yoga scared and dead tired and, just completely spent.
Yeah.
It felt like a much higher intensity type environment. Mm-hmm. But anyway, well, Nikki, is there anything else that you'd like to add that we haven't hit on, just for those who may be listening and thinking, ugh, what do I do? What do I do? Am I going to do it? Just some encouragement to pass along.
I think just, kind of touching on, I do think a lot of times to show up to a space feels very intimidating. And I do think what we were saying, no one's really watching. And the priority of our health and wellness physically and mentally is so much more important than if someone was watching and placing a judgment. Problem. That's their problem. It's a stranger, and they're not going to think about it again once they leave that space anyway. But you're going to have this gift of health and wellness for however long you choose to be on that journey. So I think, just do your best to remember what the priority is and go for it.
And if you don't have your health, what do you have?
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us for this episode of At Home with Emily. If you are watching on YouTube, we would love for you to just like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. They drop every Wednesday. You can also follow Around the Ozarks on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and all of the others. And you can also head to AroundTheOzarks.com where you can sign up for our daily newsletter so you don't miss a thing. I'll see you next time.